So yeah, anyway, so just welcome along. I'm really delighted to have Aryapala with us. He's beaming in from Barcelona in Spain. And what we're going to do tonight is, as you probably know, Aryapala is going to talk about his pilgrimage in Japan, in Shikoku Island. I'll let him tell you all about that. And then, so he's going to do a little slideshow and talk about the pilgrimage. And then I'll just interview him for a little while, and then we'll have a break. And then there'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions if you have questions. And what we'll do towards the end of the evening, we're going to do a special bit of meditation and puja. So we'll hear the Heart Sutra in Japanese and English, and we'll do some of the kind of practices that Aryapala was doing on his pilgrimage in Japan. So stick around for that. We'll finish up at around 9 o'clock. So that'll be the end of the evening. So I just wanted to start just by introducing Aryapala to you. So Aryapala is originally from Australia, and he's been living actually in Europe for a long time now, more than 20 years. I first got to know him actually in Australia and New Zealand, and our paths have kind of overlapped over the years, and I consider him a very good friend. I was only saying to a friend of mine earlier that another friend of mine that he's one of his qualities actually just very, very friendly, but also extremely easy company, very, very good company. I've always liked being around Aryapala. He's just very, very easy to be with and fun to be with as well. And one of the particular things I wanted to rejoice about Aryapala is he's taken, he's been involved in Triratna very, very fully, and in Croydon, in Pamaloka in particular, and now in Spain. And he's taken responsibilities. He's had responsible roles, particularly when he was the chair of the Pamaloka Retreat Centre. So he's been very much involved in the kind of what you unfortunately are obliged to call the institutions of our Buddhist community, our Buddhist movement. But at the same time, I've noticed he's always had a thread running alongside that of what you could call, and what we sometimes call, the greater mandala of uselessness. So he's always been interested in images, in myth, in story, that whole other side of things. And I feel particularly with Aryapala, he keeps that alive and has kept that alive, whilst also being involved in the more kind of institutional side of things. It's something I've always really admired and actually learned from, the importance of that, the importance of keeping one's inspiration and one's inner world alive. And in a way, I think the pilgrimage to Japan has been part of that thread of his life. So I'm really, really looking forward to hearing more about that. There's a lot more I could have said about Aryapala, but I'll let him speak for himself. But just to say that he was ordained in 2003, and his name, Aryapala, means one who defends spiritual excellence or spiritual qualities. So yeah, really delighted to have you, Aryapala, and looking forward to hearing and seeing what you're going to share with us.
Thanks, Nyanadara. Very generous, very kind of you. Very good to be here. We'll be here. I'm here and you're there, but with you all in this way. And thanks for the generous introduction. I too have enjoyed Nyanadara's humour and company and easygoingness. It's very good to meet someone quite normal in Triratna, and so it's great. And thanks for inviting me to give this, Yvonne and Nyanadara. And I'm going to show you some images, and that's very easy to do. And I'm going to talk as I go along about the images and this, I suppose, a little bit of the story as to how I came to go to Shikoku in the first place. So bear with me, there's always going to be technical stuff, hiccups and bits and bobs, so bear with me. And so what do I got to play this? So okie dokie. So let's start. That's me in Japan. But as I said, I don't know if you can hear that. I tried to there's a glitch. That's the Heart Sutra playing. I don't know if you can hear that. Can you hear that?
Can hear it a little bit, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So that's the Heart Sutra being chanted at one of the temples, which I'll attempt to chant later. And yeah, with these slides, I tried to edit that out, but for some reason it just goes for it. But let's go on to the next slide, because when I was a kid growing up in Melbourne, my first introduction to Buddhism was Swan Sung and the story of his pilgrimage from China to India and back again over 16 years, played out in a kids' TV show called Monkey Magic. So I don't know if you got that in Ireland.
We had it in New Zealand.
New Zealand. Yeah. So Monkey Magic. So here you go. Here's a little monk, played by a female actress. There's a Japanese series, and you had the Buddha come in and say some funny things, which as what was I, 7 or 8, I didn't understand, but it was completely, intriguing. And alongside TV shows, movies, depicting stories, particularly of travel and sort of questing in some form, always grabbed my imagination. So I, in a way, see that there's connection that flows through. And we come to me at 19 after messing up a lot in my teens, and then coming across Reiki, which you've probably all heard of, and that was my introduction to Buddhism. And I mention Reiki because I'll tell you in a minute. And there's the obvious connection with me coming across the Dharma through Reiki, and an inspiration. He was an inspiration to me. So, yeah. Moving swiftly along. So, as Yanadara said, I lived in Pamaloka community, and here's me, front row 1 from the left, going right, next to Aryapala on the bottom left. And I loved working and living at Pamaloka, and I decided in 2017 to leave, not knowing what I'd do. And I thought I'd do some sort of wandering, and well, Usui, the Reiki master, sort of came back to my mind, and I thought, well, I'd love to go to Japan. And another friend of mine at Pamaloka has spent time in Japan, and he's Australian, and we were both going to go back to Australia at the same time. So we said, why not? Let's go through Japan on our way back. And that's quite easy to do, actually, from the UK. And that's what we did. So I was telling the guys, I'm going to go to Japan, and what I'll do is I'll spend time going on some sort of pilgrimage. I don't know what it'll be, but maybe to Usui. He introduced me to Buddhism, really. So I'll do some sort of gratitude to him by some sort of pilgrimage. And also my time at Pamaloka, and even before, I was doing a kind of pilgrimage to a place called Monastery in London, which is where the order began. It's now a perfume shop, number 14 Monmouth Street, and opposite the road is Monmouth Coffee Company. So I'd go and read Bante, sitting having a coffee, and mulling over how on earth this order movement came into being. So I already had a sort of, I don't know, a feel or an interest in pilgrimage, following through up until this point. And then my good friend Satcharaja, wherever he is up the back, woolly hat, middle left, he put a book in front of me called Japanese Pilgrimage by Oliver Statler. I said, it is a Japanese pilgrimage, and it's by Kukai, who's on our refuge tree. And I thought, fantastic, here we go. That's what I'll do. I'll do this pilgrimage. So that's a bit of an introduction. Bante, inspiration, Rainbow Road, walking with his friend barefoot across India to become a monk, to become ordained. So it's an ancient Buddhist practice. And so something was sort of bubbling up and moving me toward this this practice, whatever, I suppose, whatever it meant. I didn't have any guidebook as to what you do or how you do it. I used Swan Sung, his pilgrimage to India. So he was on pilgrimage from 629 to 645. Is that 16 years? And he brought back the Heart Sutra to China. And yeah, a lot of other scriptures. That's a typical picture of him. And oh, wrong way. There's Kobodaishi or Kukai, and he was in Japan around the same time that Padmasambhava was going to Tibet, or had, yeah, around the same time. And Kukai went to China and brought back esoteric Buddhism, so Vajrayana, so lots of images, lots of ritual implements, lots of mantras. And again, I was attracted to him when I came across Triratna for some reason. So anyway, on with, got to Shikoku Island. Yes, okay. And I went on pilgrimage, and here's Shikoku Island in relation to Japan. So find that, yeah, it's very rural, and it's about the size of Wales. I think it's a little bit smaller than Wales. There you go, 18,800 kilometers. So yeah, flew into Tokyo, and what did I do? Flew into Shikoku. And there's another little dot above Shikoku called Shodoshima, which is another pilgrimage island, which I'll mention later. There's a Google map of Tokushima, one of the major cities where you start. And these little hats are temples are dotted around. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so what we got, Shikoku Island, temples. 88 temples, walked for over 1,200 years. So Kukai, from the mainland, he'd make his way over to these very rural, wild, very unpopulated islands, the little ones, big ones, very mountainous, and perform meditations and mantra chanting on mountains in difficult places, and just wander from village to village. And really the pilgrimage, you could say, is sort of grown up around the places where he practiced, and other interesting and famous hermits, Buddhists practiced. Oh, wrong way. And there's me. I think more than halfway through my pilgrimage, wearing a traditional white, which symbolizes death. So yeah, you would go to Shikoku traditionally, and maybe you wouldn't come back. Maybe you would be sent to Shikoku because you were poor, or you were cast out for doing something naughty, or you were sick and you weren't going to get better. So you just walk, and you'd visit temples, and maybe you'd die along the way. So traditional pilgrim would look like that on the right. Yep. And there's a Japanese gentleman, very casual, still wearing the conical hat. Maybe he's got a staff somewhere. Yeah, let's launch. Yeah, launch in. So the route goes through cities, towns, villages, mountains, signposted everywhere, little symbols and arrows, information about how far you got to go to the next temple. And a lot of it's paved. A lot of this pilgrimage is paved, so along coastal roads and footpaths. And it's 1,200 kilometer walk, or most people these days. It's in the tens of thousands walk, do the pilgrimage every year, I think, but mainly by coach. Very traditional Japanese, get off, get on, take a few pics, make your obeisance. And you collect temple stamps and calligraphy at each temple, which is incredibly beautiful. More of that later. So very typical little scenes, graveyards by the village in the rice paddy fields, so very rural, rice growing, veggie growing. And a lot of these are unmarked graves of those pilgrims who just toppled over at the end of their life and were taken out of the village, popped on the other village's side of the fence, maybe, or just left in an unmarked grave, shallow grave dug in some sort of stupa or stone would be erected, and that was that. Lots and lots of these unmarked graves are in Shikoku. So we wind our way up these rocky paths as well, walked over 1,000 years with little temples along the way. So one thing that I was immediately struck by in Japan was it's a Buddhist country. And in a way that was a relief. And to wear my kesa every day and to wear this white tunic and have this staff with a bell on, I would quite happily walk and chant out loud and perform puja, which I did every day. And even be, sitting, meditating. It's normal, particularly on Shikoku Island, because it's famous for pilgrims. So yeah, it'll pop up the other side of the mountain, and in the distance is a town or a city, and that would be the day's walk. And you wind your way through the town and out the other side, find through a guidebook. It's very great. You've got an English guidebook, and there's guidebooks in Japanese and French, and a lot of people have done a lot of work on that. And it's a great guidebook, and shows you where you can buy food, shows where you can sleep, and particularly huts that you can sleep in, or phone numbers of ryokans, like traditional Japanese inns, temple accommodation, etc. Sort of like a list of best ones. It's a really good guidebook. Sometimes you get lost, that's natural. I think you lost that often. So you go through cities, and you might notice this is Tokushima. So yeah, just walking by, peak hour traffic with kesa on and a staff and a funny hat. And there's some superhero on top of the building up there, top right. And that was the rooftop of a guest house, which I stayed in. So I tried all the accommodation, but primarily my accommodation is just walking through a small town. It was early, kids are off to school on the right there, a bit rainy. Walking through a mall yet to open on the left, and walking through, again, a very typical village, behind the Taiwanese guy I met. And in Shikoku, you meet lots and lots of people on pilgrimage, and lots of people who support pilgrims. And they're, in a way, I'll say more about that later, about the people who support the pilgrims. Walking down the paddy field up into the mountain, hoping you're not going to get soaked. And on the right, you're just coming off this road, and the arrow's taking you basically into the middle of that bamboo grove, and then you're up over the hill there. So that would be great. My feet, after 2 weeks, were screaming at me because I was carrying all my camping stuff. And so when I went off track onto uneven ground, it was much easier on my feet than just a constant road, very much like that, and footpath. Again, signposts, lots of panorama shots of coastal roads. So a lot of coastline, very beautiful. So lots of sea. And Kukai, he named himself Kukai because the point at which he felt he reached full enlightenment, he was in a cave looking out to sea, and I think Ku is sea and Kai might be sky. So that was his identification with that particular natural spot. So again, little shrines, little Kashitiga, we know this bodhisattva as, and it's been turned into like a little baby, and they call that Jizo, bodhisattva, or Jizo Botsatsu. And animals, yeah, lots of nature, little turtle, tortoise in the river, with a dump bike, snake on a cold evening, butterflies landing on you, cats everywhere, very Japanese. Ravens, crows, lots of birds of prey, wild pigs, wild monkeys, koi, terrapins, I think. I don't know if that's a terrapin, nasty bite. And talking of nature, there was one earthquake about 3/4 of the way through. There was no tsunami warning for that one, thank goodness, from that earthquake. And I was in the bath, and I was up 2 flights, and I thought there was a bunch of kids running down the stairs. It's like, geez, that's a heavy old, bunch of kids running downstairs. So that was an earthquake. And all around the towns, you get these signs indicating how far off of sea level you are and where the evacuation center is. So constant reminder. I was a little bit anxious about that. In an earthquake, all these little circles and numbers on the left on around Shikoku and around mainland Japan are earthquake announcements on an app, max intensity 3. So that felt like, number 3 felt like a bunch of kids running down the stairs. So there, yeah, nature and water, as I say, walking around the coast, and then inland there are rivers and streams, beautiful, just constant water, reminder of nature. So as I said, people will get a coach, some people, he got on his motorcycle a lot. He'd done the pilgrimage, I don't know, 5 times on his bike. He had all the kit, a little holder for his staff. Nice guy, yeah, all his camping stuff. Cyclists I met on a ferry, a lot of cyclists, and just the bottom right, that's a really rough looking cat. And yep, another sign, lots of animated signs. The Japanese love anime, as you probably know. And okay, and people, yeah, some of the guys I met, men and women and young and old. There was a 40-year-old lad and his 72-year-old mum walking the whole lot. These lads walked, shared accommodation. My friend down on the bottom right, Veronica from Holland, she was gas. She fell out of bed on top of me one night, and that's her trying to keep warm with an emergency blanket. And me, I don't know who that is behind me. That was a bit weird. That's a mannequin, kooky mannequin. Temples, so 88 temples plus 22 minor temples, not quite associated with the pilgrimage, but maybe associated with Shingon Buddhism, Shinto, the natural religion, pagan religion of Japan. Entering through a gate, you reach the temple gate and you pass the protectors, powerful protectors that you bow as you reach, and you make up Osen Jafuda, are these kind of graffiti on temple walls and gates. So these black kanji on these white stickers, that would be the kind of tag if someone was on pilgrimage. They'd put their name and maybe where they're from, and they'd stick it on the temple as a sort of sign that they've done the pilgrimage or they've been there. I think that's illegal now. And and you purify yourself, or you announce you've arrived by ringing the bell. Big old bells, cast brass, and then you purify your hands and then your mouth before entering. Yep, there's me ringing the bell. So big old lump of wood that swings and hits the bell. You pull it with a rope or a chain. Give it a good old whack. Announce to the gods and the deities you've arrived. And then main hall. This is, for instance, a main hall. You make some money offerings and you put a name slip in a little receptacle, and then an incense candle, and then you recite the Heart Sutra. And I eventually started taking up the Japanese Heart Sutra. Before I was doing the Sanskrit one that we learned, Nadara learned on our ordination course. But I thought, oh, come on, I've got to learn the Japanese. I still don't know it off by heart, but a main temple hall with, I think, Amitabha at the back. So temples representing Shingon Buddhism, which is founded by Kukai, I think Soto Zen, Dogen, Hakuin, maybe. I'm not sure if there's any Hakuin related temples of Soto, the other school of Zen, I can't think of it at the minute. And Tendai, I think Tendai Buddhism, similar esoteric to Shingon. And then after making obeisance to the main temple, you go to what's called a Daishido, where Kobodaishi or Kukai resides. So you pay your obeisance to him, incense, candle, name slip, Heart Sutra. So it could take quite a long time, and you're supposed to be reciting other mantras associated with the main deity. But I'd do that on the approach. I'd look up in my little guidebook, who's the main deity, and I'd start, who's the main Buddha, Bodhisattva, who start doing their mantra. We all know their mantra probably in Sanskrit. So I'd do it in Sanskrit. And Fudo Myo is also known as Achala in Sanskrit. He was very much presiding over most temples. He's got two little attendants either side. He's on fire, he's got fangs, holds a sword and like a lasso, which tightens as you try and run away. And he sits on a rock, not a lotus. And I was fascinated by this figure of Fudo Myo. I'd come across his image before, which I was fascinated by, but he really stood out this time. I've got fangs. He's got fangs, and his eyes are sort of like bulging out of his head. One looks up, one looks down. Kukai bought him from China, and yeah, like a Akshobhya Wrathful Vajrapani-esque. And I was practicing the Manjughosha sadhana. He holds a sword, Bodhisattva wisdom, and my sadhana began to have this sword by his side. It's usually over his head, and as I'd meditate, his sword turned up at his side a number of times. So well, the Bodhisattva, it is the Bodhisattva Monju in Japan. He has his sword at his side, but Fudo is starting to influence me then, and he's associated with waterfalls as well. Nagas, yeah. So there he is in the waterfall, and usually there's a naga around his sword as well. And in the background, there's a naga here on the left image. Fire puja is offered to Fudo Myo, and purifying, lots of purification. And Kshitigaba, another sort of principal deity protecting the pilgrims. How am I doing for time? Sorry, I've completely overlooked time.
Yeah, you're good. You maybe got about another 12 minutes or something if we follow what we... Is that all right?
Yep. Yeah. Thanks. I'm losing track of time. Jizo Kshitigaba, but Jizo principally goes into the hell realms to help those stuck in the hell realms. And in Japan, it became associated with unborn babies and children who died young or in childbirth or at birth. So it became very associated with little babies, little kids. So people would make offerings of bibs and baby-related clothing. So very sweet, little bonnets everywhere, little knitted crocheted bonnets, little kids, little baby lights or little babies are in that one on the left. Bib and bonnet and Jizo Botsatsu. Cool. And sorry, I'm whipping through these 500 arahants. So these are carved figures. So arahants, they're represented in very much in Asian Buddhism, all sorts of different arahants. And here's one that looks like a friend of mine on the right, and there's one I made a friend of on the left. And and again,
Which friend is that, Aryapala?
Aryapala. And so lots of Buddhas around the Naga, surrounded by flames, holding onto the sword of wisdom. And there'll be water trickling around there somewhere. Underground shrines, hundreds, thousands of little canons, I think, Avalokiteshvaras. This temple was associated with different forms of Avalokiteshvara. So I'm going to have to speed up. And
don't stress it. Like you take your time if you need to.
Thank you. There's the attendance of Fudo, and this is on a beautiful waterfall. Where the original photo of where I was standing. There is a canon, particular type, holding a vase, maybe to do with initiation, not sure. And he's got different heads at the top. And as I said, the stamps, vermilion stamps and calligraphy at each temple, which I found fascinating and beautiful to watch. Each calligrapher do their own style and concentrate and be attentive. And the Nokyocho, it's called, this book of stamps and temple stamps and calligraphy is your proof of having completed the pilgrimage these days. And it's like a keepsake, talisman. People get buried with it. You can also get scrolls stamped and calligraphied. Don't know what that, if that's a word. And like a protective amulet even. It's very important in Temple 88. These little offices. In Osetai, okay. Osetai means dana, really. And along the way, all these huts, I've not even crossed the huts, all these huts are supported and maintained by locals. There's a family that just came up to me and gave me water. Sometimes these oldies would come out and it'd be a big stretch of road to the next temple. So they'd sit you down, feed you, give you lots of sweets and water and iced tea. And one of the ladies is, I think, in her 90s at the back there. That was up the front with the pink scarf. She's 72 and that's her son on the left. He's 40, 41. They were walking the pilgrimage. And other people who offered accommodation, free accommodation, free food, roadside kind of stops, tea. Just very generous. Or just people who wanted you to sign a piece of paper to say they'd met you. And strange and wonderful, really. And accommodation, okay, really rough. What's that? 2-3 tatami room in the middle of the construction site, put on by the construction owner because he wants to make merit. And that's still in the culture of supporting the pilgrim, and you're representing, in a way, the ideal, doing the pilgrimage for others. So if you support the pilgrim, then it's meritorious. So a lot of money goes into that, and also just ordinary people offer up their part of their house. And the bottom one was by a tatami maker family, and there was only one family member left, and she was in her 90s. I spent the night there. And yeah, or you pay a very small amount and you receive a very traditional Japanese meal. On the right, a very old 100-year-old house, wooden old bakelite telephone. Had to ring the owner, pick up the phone, and you had to dial the number, and she, yep, I'm coming around, and she'd give you an induction. And she wrote a book about Kukai, and she'd tell you about that. Just some random, this is in the guidebook, random gazebo picnic table, which I spent the night getting wet. It rained really badly, and the cars driving by, big puddles formed and splashed on me all night. So I had a bivy bag, my sleeping bag and mat were in the bivy bag, reasonably waterproof. And so quickly, yeah, I'm outside a temple on the left, just straight on the concrete, in a sleeping bag. Right-hand picture, kids' playground. That was lovely, sleeping on the deck of that little wooden boat at night, starry night. So a bit off the main road. That road was not busy at all. Really lovely. Under a very remote kind of, it's kind of showers and toilet for people walking the beach, and I slept underneath it, but I dreamt I was floating away because I was freaking out, and I didn't float away. On the beach, slept on the beach, in these kind of roadhouses, let's call it, with local gifts and foods. And as the shop owners close up, you say, can I sleep under the eaves? And they're like, yeah. And as long as you go on by 5 or 4:30 in the morning, or opening hours, you're fine. Here's a train station between the convenience store machines. Yeah, there's my on this bench. So hope you don't roll off. So it's very normal, it's very normal. And another roadside place that played Beatles constantly. I'm getting prepared to do my puja at night, sevenfold puja. And as I was saying in Nyanadara earlier, I devote the puja to, it was like a special connection with the people who had given me something through the day, because I was just so moved. People would stop their car, hop out and go, here you go, take these bag of peanuts, or have this orange, or do you need to stay the night somewhere? And I just jot down their name or remember them and do a puja, sevenfold puja, and then fall asleep in exhaustion. And here's a purpose-built henro hut, they're called, with a little symbol of the henro. This one wasn't too great because the sides were just like that on the right, and particularly if it rained, but can't complain. One by the road. And yep, again, one by a bathhouse. And to stay in the accommodation, you have to have a bath, which I loved. And there's one by a river, and one up near a temple, so it's up on a hill. And there's the nice paid for accommodation with the tatami futons, shared room, shared dorm. In the train station, on the benches of the train station, so people looking at you when they're going to work in the morning. It's fine, it's part of the thing. Sort of country shrines, you'd have to be very polite and ask to use the shrine to sleep in. Big old spider in that one on the right, can't believe the size of that. Temple accommodation, sometimes really nice, really posh, and really rough free accommodation. Lots of signs in Japanese which I didn't understand. I learned a little bit of Japanese before going. And if you're at a temple, you can join in the morning ritual, which would be chanting with the drum and a gong, and maybe a little talk would be given, again in Japanese. Lots of images on the shrine, very rich. Shingon temple, Kukai. Eating out of convenience stores, that was my main source of food. Coffee, rice. It's just a random photo I got just to sort of show you what sort of stuff is for sale. And lots of machines, which is great. you get water and the sort of salts replacement waters, really good for walking. Very typical convenience store, Conveni, Lawson Station. And a toilet, and yeah, needed an instruction manual how to use the toilet and how to not sit on the toilet, and yeah, strange flushing mechanisms. That was fun. Oh yeah, and there's one button just for the ladies, apparently. Don't know why. Flushing sound exclusively for women. Don't ask me why. Don't know. Strange and wonderful. Love Japan. Love it. Oh, and there's a bidet exclusively for women. Hey, why? You know. I tried it out. It's a really unique experience. And yeah, you can, it even, as soon as you sit on it, it starts to warm up and play sounds of birds chirping and things. So not all of them, but, and then bathhouses, ones for putting your feet in, or a bath in a guest house on the right, tiny little baths. A big bathhouse. This one inspired the anime Spirited Away in Matsuyama, and that's part of the bathhouse. So great for the feet, great for the achy bones and muscles. A temple up in the mountains, in the clouds, temple walking through great big cedars and mountain shrines, again, where people would have meditated. This might be temple 88, my last temple. Yes, I think that's me looking relatively relaxed, pleased with myself. And then I went to Koya, Mount Koya, which is traditionally where you finish off your pilgrimage, where Kukai is buried, outside of Kyoto, and that's a part of a letter he wrote to the a nobleman, probably one of the nobles in Kyoto that wanted him to be part of politics. He loved this mountain, and I don't think he spent as much time as he would have liked, but it's so beautiful. It's one of the largest cemeteries in Japan. And I was just going to read you this, and then we have to start wrapping up. But so I say, this is from the Mitra study course. Our education and culture often do not help. Many of us have been indoctrinated to see the surface of things as the whole of reality, while the realms of symbol and myth that the imagination opens up are dismissed and make-believe. We need to reserve this assumption if we want to live a life of real meaning. We need to learn to see the world in the way that the great spiritual geniuses have seen it, as a living, multi-layered reality, where the surface appearance of things hides deeper dimensions of symbolic and mythic truth. To those with such a vision, the symbolic and mythic aspects of the world are the reality, or to put it another way, reality is itself symbolic and mythic. The imagination, which allows us to perceive this deeper dimension of things, is the faculty which allows us to experience the truth. This is Sangharakshita's view of imagination at its highest, which he calls the Imaginal Faculty. And Kukai built this monastery on top of Mount Koya as a symbolic representation, I think, of the spiritual world, or a spiritual dimension. Yeah, it's quite beautiful. And okay, stupas on Mount Koya, covered in moss. Monks going to give offerings to Kukai. Again, after paying my respects to Kukai, I went to Hiroshima, so I'm almost finished. So Hiroshima being a place I wanted to visit, but also as a place to transfer any merits that I might have gained. I wanted to do it because I've never been to Hiroshima, I wanted to do it at the Peace Memorial, and maybe some of you have been there, and this is across from the Peace Memorial. just kind of obviously a center of, you know, a deep wish for peace and the abolition of all arms, bombs, war. So that's where I was, and that's where I officially finished my pilgrimage. And I think I'll end there. And well, this is Shadoshima again, yeah, which I walked in 2019. Just finished 2019 before pre-COVID. And that's the old sort of style map of Shadoshima, but maybe that's for another time. And, there you go. I like that map. It's a beauty. Much more mountainous than Shikoku, but there you go. Something about pilgrimage. Yeah. Well, let's leave it at that. I think I've said and shown enough, and hand over to you, Yanadara.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Hey, can you spotlight me, Prasanna Deva? Oh yeah, great, thanks. Thanks, Aryapala, fantastic. It was really beautiful to see your pictures and just to get a sense or a feeling for what it was like to do that. It just strikes me it's just very, very different from the normal way that we live, and also probably very different from the normal way that we practice Buddhism. You know, like when you think about the kind of pattern of a lot of our practice would be, you know, coming to the Buddha center in a city like Dublin, going on retreats, and you're just going on pilgrimage. It's a very particular thing, particularly doing it in a completely different culture.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to ask you, you know, like, what is it about the act of pilgrimage that's special? What's the particular magic, or you mentioned that the mythic or the symbolic at the end there?
Yes, I did, didn't I? And you know, I could have said a lot as I went on, but I just like showing pictures, and it's really easy to do. But I was thinking, like, of, you know, life as pilgrimage. You know, we've got the return journey, and there's something about trying to put into practice every day what we learn about Buddhism, what the nature of reality, just from going from A to B, for example, and remembering our purpose. Maybe it's easier to remember that purpose if you feel like you're walking in the footsteps of a great person, maybe, and it's easier to sense that. Well, Bodh Gaya, Sarnath,
Yeah.
you know.
Is it something to do with the fact that, like, you can't make it into something other than what it is, if you see what I mean? Like, if you're on a pilgrimage, it doesn't have any utility, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. Well, particularly Shikoku, because it's a circular pilgrimage, and you can start anywhere. I mean, and you go through the 88 temples, but it's not like you go to Bodh Gaya and you stop at the Bodhi tree and go home, sort of thing, or go on to the next. But it's just the act of going is the thing, is the purpose, I suppose, and recollection of your purpose as you go.
You also you also talked about, when we were talking this afternoon, about renunciation, about pilgrimage as an act of renunciation. And it did strike me that, you know, it was a pretty hardy existence, sleeping on the ground and by the road, and
definitely, yeah, going into a culture, particularly rural Japan. I mean, you go to Tokyo and there's a lot of signs in English, and that's okay, but Shotashima hardly had anything in English, and you just had to adapt. And it was, yeah, going into, yeah, challenging situation from what I was used to in the, as you call it, yeah, they are the institutions of Triratna, that a particular type of practice that, you know, you add fuel to the fire in a different way. You know, we love community. You know, there's benefits in or just stepping out and going to a Buddhist center and meditating and doing a funny ritual. You know, or there's, you know, maybe wanting to live communally or whatever. And as a Buddhist practice, it's tried and tested, but it's not so central in Triratna. But well, as I've learned, it's like every person's different, and everyone's got their particular interest, and luckily that's the case, because we can follow these threads of interest, I suppose, like I've been affected by myself, and then can edge towards. And I'm really pleased that there are these pilgrimages, and even like Ashtana, you know, people want it to become a pilgrimage.
Well, I've heard of people walking to Adhisthana from different parts of the UK.
Yeah.
I think Stana Shraddha walked along the canal, didn't they, from London or something?
Yeah. There is something about, like I said, my feet were screaming at me, and every night that happened to be the case. And using that stuff as a crutch sometimes, and it's kind of a symbol again of spiritual life. You go through difficult times and you think it's not working, or you're just having a really hard time, but you just keep going, not ignoring pain necessarily, but you know what I mean?
So there's an act. I mean,
you don't give up because you get a blister.
And what would you say, like, what was the most challenging part of the pilgrimage?
Physical pain, I'd say, straight up. Blisters on top of blisters. If you've ever had that, it's particular exquisite kind of dukkha.
And what about kind of, I don't know, internally? I mean, did doubt ever come up?
No. More, I suppose, feeling, is this having an effect? Or, you know, I suppose that's a doubt, isn't it? That's fair enough. That's fair enough doubt. Is this having an effect? What, you know, am I putting in the right effort? Sort of thing. But definitely, sense of humiliation time to time. You know, putting the wrong set of shoes on to walk inside the house. So, no, they're the outdoor shoes. What are you doing? Oh God.
Yeah. And what about inspiration? What was sort of what was the thing that kept you inspired to get up in the morning and keep walking each day?
Not sure, but one thing that pops to mind, which I didn't sort of spell out, was my routine was based on, I suppose, what I learned through Triratna. I got up and meditated, and I do about an hour, and that was quite early, around 4:30, and then I'd set out and I just go through like our puja book and do the Triratna Vandana, and maybe that was out loud, and particular invocations and mantras and sevenfold puja, and I just stop where there'd be a shrine, and I'd offer a sweet or something, or some incense, not usually a sweet. And again, like Japan being a Buddhist country, it's just something like really easy, although Japanese Buddhism is very different from, you know, what we've grown up with in a way. So that again, it was a bit of an adjustment, that there was something that was easy in that to feel, comfortable, but a certain sort of ease with being Buddhist and practicing outwardly.
Yeah. That seems to, but you mentioned that a few times, that seemed to be quite a significant aspect of the pilgrimage, of just being able to be kind of publicly and openly and unashamedly and unapologetically a Buddhist.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
And then, I suppose in a certain confidence that comes with people giving, people giving you stuff, and devoting their life to supporting pilgrims, building accommodation, and putting money into offer food and drink. There's really quite something so moving. That element of that culture. So confidence in being supported as well. Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. I'm just aware of time, and you might like to have a little break. We might have like a little break. So thanks again so much for just giving so generously of your experiences, and also the beautiful photos that you've taken. And incredible that the statues and the temples and is really, they're really incredible. It's wonderful to see. So thanks again. Hey, look, we'll have a break for 10 minutes. So it's just gone 8 o'clock. And if you've got questions for Aryapala, you could put them in the chat, or you could actually just unmute yourself after the break and ask directly. So we'll do a little bit of questions to see if there's questions, and then we'll finish. Like I said, we'll have hopefully a good 30 or 40 minutes to do some meditation and a little bit of puja along the lines of what Aryapala was doing in Japan.